Now let's get started with our district attorney forum. We have some great Democratic candidates for district attorney here. We have Bobby Grace, Deputy District Attorney with the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office for many years with the Major Crimes Division, many homicide cases, more than I can count. Apparently has a big case right now, but they're all big cases, aren't they? Let's see, awards, Pursuit of Justice Award from the Association of Deputy District Attorneys, Board of Directors of UCLA Black Alumni. We have Jackie Lacey, also, USC Law School, Chief Deputy District Attorney of Los Angeles County, with the District Attorney of Los Angeles County. He prosecuted many criminal cases also over a long career. Has served on the Special Circumstances Committee that recommends penalties in death penalty eligible cases. Has overseen development of several programs, including animal cruelty prosecution, graffiti prosecution, and gun prosecution. Named Deputy District Attorney of the Month by the Association of Deputy District Attorneys, and recognized by the U.S. Department of Justice for successful prosecution of hate crimes. We also have Danette Meyers, Howard University Law School, a Deputy District Attorney with the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, has also prosecuted many crimes over a long career with the District Attorney's Office, Prosecutor of the Year by the Los Angeles County Bar Association, named one of California's top lawyers by the Daily Journal, and President of the Los Angeles County Bar Association. All right, now, we're going to be having a panel asking questions. Let me just briefly introduce the panel we have that's going to be asking questions of our candidates. We have from the Beach Cities Club, Rochelle Snyder, who is an attorney at law and an MBA, the legal and business consulting, and also involved with the National Association of Women Business Owners, was the president of National Association of Women Business Owners OC, among other things. We have Al Lay from the LAX Area Democratic Club, one of the founders of the club. We have Edgar Sines, an attorney who was at one time Congresswoman Maxine Waters' field representative, has run for state elected office, the president-elect of the Westchester Rotary Club, representing the West LA Democratic Club. We have the president of the West LA Democratic Club, Alan Bale, an attorney who is the Stanford Law, oh no, not Stanford Law, Loyola Law School, sorry about that. Mixing up my bios here. Oh, sorry about that. Edgar is Stanford Law, sorry. Okay. And, well, Alan served as Deputy Attorney General in the California Department of Justice, and what's interesting to me is began his career as an intern in the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, and now is back to ask questions. So you have to look out for the intern. You may come back later to ask questions. All right, now the format of our forum here is that we're going to begin with opening statements from the candidates, 3 minutes each. Then we're going to have questions from the panel. Each member of the panel will ask 2 questions. They have 1 minute to ask the question, and then each candidate will take 1 minute to respond, with a minute for rebuttal if that's necessary. And after that period is over, we're going to have 20 minutes for question and answer from the audience. Okay? All right, so why don't we begin with opening statements by the candidates. Bobby Grace, you ready to begin?
Yes. You have a mic, Bobby, there at the table.
Good afternoon.
Hit the mute button. You should be working on it.
Good afternoon, everyone. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good. As stated, my name is Bobby Grace. I've been a Deputy District Attorney for 23 years. I'm your neighbor in Ladera Heights. Been there now for over 20 years, and before that, a resident of Inglewood. I attended the University of California at Los Angeles, where I was student body president. And then I attended Loyola Marymount School of Law. So I'm happy to be where I graduated from, although the law school campus is downtown. So we only got to come here to play basketball and for our beautiful graduation. So it's good to be here. I have been a deputy district attorney in 3 specialized units. So I've been in our hardcore gang division for 7 years, in our domestic violence unit for 5 years, and now 7 years in our major crimes division. I have been the LA County Bar Criminal Justice Section Prosecutor of the Year in 2008. I serve on the Association of Deputy District Attorneys, our collective bargaining unit, union board, and have been there for the last 7 years. And I was one of the co-founders of our union when we just become affiliated with the union in 2011. I was one of the co-founders. I'm running for LA County District Attorney because I want a platform of smart but tough on crime, which I think, given the discussion we just heard, is so important here in California. We need to be tough on public corruption and fraud, and I commit to you today that that will be one of the main focuses of my administration when I'm elected district attorney. That's going to save taxpayers money, but also make sure that we have faith in our democracy, which is the most important thing for our citizens here in LA County. Number 2 is we're going to focus in on juvenile justice reform and truancy. Education is the civil rights issue of today. We're going to make sure that our kids are going to school and that taxpayers are getting the bang for their buck, and all the money that you spend in public education to have almost half the school children out of school is despicable and should not happen in a civilized society, and that will be one of the things that I'll be focusing on. Finally, we're going to take up the mantle of realignment. We're going to push forward this whole idea of smart but tough on crime and come up with a far-reaching, long-range plan for the criminal justice system that the state legislature did not do. We've got to have a plan to figure out how many people are we going to have in our prisons, how many people are we going to have in our local jails, how many people are going to be out on work release, how many people can we put into drug rehabilitation programs and job training programs, and we're going to demand that part of the money that comes from the state that goes to local areas for realignment, that part of that money goes to drug rehabilitation programs, mental health programs, and job training programs to save money. Finally, I know which is important to the West Side and this group, is we're going to get back on top in environmental policy. We haven't had the opportunity to do that for the last 12 years. We're going to get back in that area. We're going to get our deputies trained to work in that area, and we're going to work to make sure that this particular area and all areas of LA County have the same environmental protections as everywhere else in the state. Thank you for listening to me.
Good afternoon. I'm Jackie Lacey. I'm the Chief Deputy of the LA County District Attorney's Office. I am the first African American woman to hold that job, and I'm running to be your District Attorney. I'm endorsed by the current District Attorney, Steve Cooley, as well as the former Public Defender, Mike Judge. I have more judges who contributed to my campaign because they understand the experience, the wisdom, and the knowledge I bring to the table. I am very interested in making sure that with realignment, that your communities remain safe. Because in looking at realignment, what the state has done has shifted the responsibility of managing prisoners at the county level, but they didn't shift the money. They didn't shift the resources. And no one is really taking it to the legislature and to Governor Brown and demanding that we get our fair share of that money. Because if you shift those people into our communities without resources to treat them if they have mental illness, without resources to send them to drug programs, without any jobs, you will see our communities deteriorate in terms of safety. I also have some ideas which I have helped implement. You know, a lot of politicians probably come to you and they make promises, but do they deliver? My experience, my candidacy is different. I have delivered, and now I'm coming and saying, let me build on what I've already delivered. I was a part of the team that launched the first women's reentry court. And this gives women who are imprisoned a second chance, a safe environment, so that they don't go back in and they stay out. I have also been a part of launching what's called the Mental Health Co-occurring Disorders Court. Many people are suffering from mental illness, and they need treatment, and they aren't getting it. I am very committed to making sure with realignment that we expand those courts and that we continue to head in that direction. It saves money. Women's Reentry Court has saved $6 million, and it saves lives. So I'm running. My name is Jackie Lacey. I look forward to answering more questions about my candidacy. And I'm asking you to support me because I believe that Carmen Trutanich is the wrong person, character-wise, just based on character, to run the DA's office. And I can beat him.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Danette Meyers. I, too, am a neighbor. Since 1987, I have lived in the View Park area. And then prior to that, I lived in Compton. A resident of Los Angeles for over 50 years. I come to you with 26 years of experience. I come to you as the endorsed candidate of the Democratic Party, of 15 of the major Democratic clubs. I come to you as one of the endorsed candidates by the National Women's Political Caucus. And I come to you, most importantly, as the endorsed candidate of the Association of Deputy District Attorneys, your peers. If your peers say, we want you, that speaks volumes. Why do they want me? Because I have a platform to reform the district attorney's office. Mr. Cooley's been in there for 12 years. And for 12 years, LA County keeps sending more and more people to California's death row. As a prosecutor, I sent 4 people to California's death row. Guess what? We're spending billions of dollars and nobody's being executed because it's just not working. I have a plan as the next district attorney of LA County, if the initiative in November does not pass, to reform that system. And I can work with the Attorney General because I supported the Attorney General. And I know that she will open her doors for me. Juvenile justice reform. It's got to be reformed. I grew up in Compton. My parents bought in Compton when the racial covenants were lifted. They educated me and told me about being a good and productive citizen. We need to get back to that. We need to hold school administrators. We need to hold parents. We need to hold society accountable for the ongoing recidivism that occurs in the county of Los Angeles. We spend over $200,000 a year incarcerating juveniles. Think about that money and what we could do in terms of educating juveniles. I've got a plan for that. And finally, environmental crimes. I grew up in Compton. I've seen the toxic, hazardous waste material dumping. I know what goes on. I'm going to do something about it. I've been endorsed also by the former DA, Gil Garcetti, who had a plan for environmental crimes. And I want you to know something. Ask yourself what Carmen Trutanich did. What he did for all those years before he became city attorney. He defended those polluters.
Right.
Think about that. Thank you.
Excuse me 1 second.
All right, we're going to now turn to questions from our panel. Is your microphone on? Press it and hold it. And so the panel, each member will have a minute to ask a question. I hope they'll have a microphone that works. And then the candidates will each have 1 minute to respond to the questions. And it should light up green when it comes on. Maybe the battery died on that one too. I don't know. Mine seems the battery died.
We're very noisy people.
Well, all right, they can hear you.
Raise our voices.
Anyhow, well, you need your microphone. So, Alan Bale, why don't you start with your first question?
Sure. The district attorney's office needs to work hand in hand with law enforcement in bringing cases. There seem to be persistent cliques of officers that are rogue officers who hold themselves above the law, sometimes covering up for each other, encouraging officer-involved shootings, we've heard lately. Yeah. Have you dealt with rogue officers during your time in the DA's office? If elected, would you seek to investigate and, if appropriate, prosecute such officers? And what policies might you put in place to protect innocent civilians from false charges brought by such officers?
Okay. I'm sorry. Normally the moderator tells us. Would you like to tell us which one of us?
Do we want to have Bobby begin response?
With respect to your questions, first of all, I've never been in the unit that prosecuted bad police officers, for lack of a better word, but I've had plenty of opportunities where I thought that there was misconduct that went on, where we went up the chain of command and let people know that there was a problem with the case. So in terms of a policy, when I'm elected district attorney, we will make sure that we have the resources and the training in place to go after anyone who breaks the law. So whether that's a regular citizen or rogue officers, there'll be the resources and the training of our deputies to get that done, and you've got to have both. With respect to prosecuting, the same answer. The office has to be blind with respect to who we go after. If the facts are there and it's a viable case, it does not matter what person or what kind of occupation they have, we will prosecute. And you're true, we do work hand in hand with law enforcement and our Justice Department. We also work with defense attorneys, and we are charged as deputy district attorneys to do justice on a day-to-day basis. Finally, your question is protecting the public, and the first two answers will do that.
Alan, I have been on the committee that reviews every case that has been presented to the district attorney's office where it is alleged that an officer broke the law. And here, this is my feeling on it. It doesn't matter who breaks the law. No one is above the law. And I think you need a district attorney's office that respects law enforcement, works hand in hand with them, but the DA must be courageous enough if an officer breaks the law to stand up. I have that kind of courage. I have sat on the committee that decides those cases, and we have filed those cases. I also believe, as Connie Rice, who was in sort of a civil rights attorney who helped to prosecute or helped to examine LAPD after the riots, that there needs to be training, that diversity of officers helps, but leadership does start at the top.
I did have one incident where an officer did something that he shouldn't have done. He lied on a police report, and I wrote a memo about it, and actually called the officer in, and it was very troubling to me. I don't know what happened to that particular police officer. I served on the Webster Commission, which was the parallel commission to the Christopher Commission, after the riots that occurred after the verdict in the Rodney King case. My assignment was Foothill Division, and at the conclusion of that commission, I wrote up a synopsis of the things that Los Angeles Police Department needed to do. And luckily, a lot of those things that the Webster Commission did were adopted by the Los Angeles Police Department. What I would do, I would beef up our Brady system. I have to tell you that one time I tried a case, and because certain things aren't included in that system that we presently have, at the conclusion of that case, I learned that one of my witnesses was in fact convicted of a misdemeanor in federal court. It was unfortunate to me. Sorry.
You know, maybe if we had a card warning.
Yeah.
Can
Yeah.
we do that?
Is your preference 10 seconds, 15 seconds? What's your preference?
1 minute, and it would really help.
You only have a minute.
Yeah.
1 minute
have a
response,
minute.
Yeah.
10 minutes or 20 seconds.
30 seconds, 10 seconds, and then time.
Can I do that?
30 seconds. Thank you. I'm so sorry.
Al, you want to ask
Also, will the questioner mind standing up when they ask questions so we can all hear?
Yep.
question?
The questioners need to stand up. So,
We're gonna do 30 seconds
this
and
will be
15 seconds. I'm really sorry.
they can't see
All
that.
right, so Al is going to ask the next question, and why don't we go back to Bobby Grace for the
All
you
right.
can have the microphone.
Specifically with regard to veterans, do you agree we should have
Thanks, Mom.
alternative access court for them? Can the DA's office take the lead on helping veterans to safely re-enter society?
The answer to that question is yes, and yes, we must have a policy that kind of works to make sure that all people who have served, honorably served our country, have access to criminal justice and resources within the criminal justice system. And the best way to do that is to make sure that all courts, not just one court, but all the courts in LA County and all the judges are trained with respect to issues, particular issues facing veterans. My father was a veteran of 3 wars, so I know what kind of issues these individuals face and what kind of resources are going to be necessary in the community. We want to make sure that veterans, not only that their service is honored, but they're getting the right resources and put in the right position in the community, including mental health counseling and drug rehabilitation if they need it. So that's very important and a great question to ask.
Al, it's as though this week you were in our office. I have been part of the team that has led the creation of our first Veterans Court, and we just finished our first Veterans graduation. We owe these men and women. We owe them big time. And many times they come back from 2 and 3 terms, burned out, stressed out, suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. And unfortunately, many of them are not getting encouraged to get help. So now what happens is when they get arrested, they're identified in the jails. They are sent to Veterans Court. We evaluate them, place them in a clean facility so they're not homeless. And we help them with the support of other veterans rehabilitate themselves and get their lives back together. What we need to do, though, is expand the criteria. And that is one of my proposals, is to expand the criteria. Thank you.
I would echo everything that both Bobby and Jackie said. I would trimline the process, though. I've had a number of cases in my court, and it just takes a very lengthy period of time when they're out in the branch courts to get approval to have them admitted into Veterans Court. And so I would trimline that process a lot more by identifying veterans at an earlier stage in the criminal process. So I do agree with each of the candidates, what they had to say. Thank you.
All right, why don't we have Ed, you're signed to ask the next question.
I'd like to commend all of you for running. It takes a great deal of personal courage and integrity to throw your hat in the ring, so good luck to all of you. We're happy that you made it today. My question regards the Public Integrity Unit. One of you mentioned it in your opening remarks. We are troubled when we are regaled by stories in the press about Bell City Manager Robert Rizzo and his cohorts, and most recently, County Assessor John Newgas. So what changes would you have in mind, or improvements, to the Public Integrity Unit of the DA's office?
Yeah, why don't we switch to Danette?
Thank you, Bobby. Interestingly enough, we were in the city of Inglewood at another forum, And while we conducted the forum, people were writing questions. And one of the questions and concerns of the folks in Inglewood was the fact that they have sent many complaints to our office that have not been addressed. And they wanted to know why. I have not been in the Public Integrity Division, but I can tell you this, that as the next DA of LA County, when you send a complaint in to the Public Integrity Division with respect to something that occurs, a violation of the Brown Act, or any other thing that occurs by a public official, it will be addressed. It will be properly investigated and addressed, and particularly in our communities. And I know that the Inglewood community is incredibly concerned about the fact that a number of people within that community do not live in that community who are elected officials. So it will get addressed, and unfortunately, many people feel that way. Thank you.
With regard to the Public Integrity Unit, I have every major case that gets filed comes before the committee that I sit on. And here's what we've discovered. During every election, there are multiple complaints. Everybody complains on their opponent, right? They call, they write, and we simply don't have enough staff to handle all of those complaints. But what we try to do is look at them, investigate, we prosecute them. One thing, though, I would like to change is once somebody files a complaint with the Public Integrity Unit on their opponent, they go out and issue a press release and say, so-and-so's under investigation. And they use that. They use that to get votes. And what happens is we look at it after, you know, and the investigation concludes after the election, but that person's name is never clear. And so I would like to see, first of all, the Public Integrity Unit has to go after corrupt political figures. But when there is no corruption, they should issue a memo saying, you know what, this person's cleared. We checked it out. That's only fair.
What happened with the Bell issue is probably symptomatic of what happens in a lot of different instances where there's a public official that has committed some type of crime. It takes a whistleblower to come forward and say something for our office to have any knowledge with respect to that. So what we have to do is we have to do a better job in terms of staffing and combing through whistleblower information that we get. And we need to be doing that not only with the Public Integrity Division, but also we need to be doing that with environmental crimes, because similarly, we don't know who's out there dumping, we don't know who's out there flaunting environmental regulations. So we need accurate taking of information from whistleblowers so that we can move more readily if there's a crime that's been committed.
Oh, you know, Rochelle Schneider. Schneider. Hi, Rochelle Schneider. Guess representing the Beach City. So welcome here. And I used to come to this building for work when I was employed by Hughes. And I always thought that it would make a much better place of higher learning. It's beautiful. Enjoy the trees on your way out. It's been proposed by more than one of you on the panel to create an environmental crimes unit in the DA's office. There's an elephant question in the room about funding, but I'm sure somebody else will bring that up. Given the joint jurisdiction of the Environmental Protection Agency and federal prosecutors and the existing joint task force, what cases do you have in mind to take on? There is an existing joint task force, but I believe that that's at the EPA level. So I'm kind of asking, who takes the lead? What cases can your office deal with specifically on your own, and what crimes should your office be looking at? Some of you mentioned dumping, but I'm wondering what level, since resources are scarce. Thank you.
Sure. In terms of resources being scarce, I can tell you the DA of LA County has a budget of approximately $300 million, of which most of that goes into salaries. But you do have a budget. Additionally, you have a plan, and you can put your resources toward whatever is your mission in the office. So, in terms of environmental crimes, there are a lot of protected lands. I know living out here, I remember when the project was completed out here and the wetlands were in jeopardy. I think the DA needed to look more at that, and it troubled me living so close to this area. Additionally, endangered species, a lot of them. And when developers go ahead and do something and go in and violate where those where those species are, the DA's office needs to do something about that. You can certainly allow the federal government to take control of a lot of the bigger cases, but I think in terms of local community things, the DA can handle that. And I would add more investigators and more DAs to the existing environmental crimes unit. I wish we had more time.
I didn't make the rules.
It is hard to answer. Rochelle, here's the myth that the DA's office is out of the business of prosecuting environmental crimes. That's simply not true. There are 4 or 5 people who are prosecuting these crimes, and they are doing a great job. They actually have gotten money for the county as a result of some of the judgments, and so it's there. What I think we need, though, is, and I agree with Danette, we need more resources. Right now, we only have 1 or 2 investigators, DA investigators, to supplement what other people investigate. And I would like to see many more investigators. In terms of what we should look at, I'm concerned about underground tanks that are buried. I'm concerned, obviously, about the beautiful coastline. I'm concerned about air pollution. I'm concerned about a lot of things. And I think if we had more investigators, which we can allocate the resources to, and which I would do, we might be able to assist those investigations in moving on.
In terms of resources, which was kind of the way you started out, that's a great way to talk about how we can cooperatively work with both the state attorney general's office and the federal government, and all work together, share resources, share investigators in working on these problems. There's a perfect example that was in the news where Magic Mountain is dumping a lot of their runoff from the amusement park into a river that's adjacent to the park, and it's going over their level, their allotted level for toxic waste in their area. So that's something that directly affects the public, directs the health of the public, and something that the district attorney's office should be involved in. When I'm elected, those are things that we're going to concentrate on.
Can I do a really quick follow-up? I don't think it's my fault. I don't think any of you addressed the joint task force and working with your the EPA in this, but maybe was addressed, so excuse me.
Well, I did say that we need to work with the federal government, which is the EPA, and then
You're the
Danette
only one
talked
that came
about
close.
and Danette talked about endangered species, and that's a federal area.
Okay, so that's the
Do you have a
jurisdictional issue.
response?
Yeah, I think, well, we're involved in a lot of task force, and certainly, Rochelle, I think task force work, joint task force work, and I would have, of course, no hesitation about our office joining in with the EPA or any group in terms of addressing these problems. We do that. A lot of these things aren't publicized. My hesitation was our office is so big, I just wasn't sure we already had someone on there. And I was sitting here sort of racking my brain trying to remember. And so if you're really interested in that, I certainly can email you later and tell you what the answer is.
I think it's the lack of time that you have. So I think I did address it very quickly when I said, yes, I would work with each of the task force, both the federal government and the state government, to deal with the problem, the environmental problems. You know, it's a real problem, because what are we sending to the next generation? We're sending a society that is riddled with a lot of environmental issues, and I think we need to stop it right now.
All right, why don't we go back to Alan Bale for the next question, and perhaps Jackie Lacey could be the first one.
Even before the latest budget shortfall in the state, the LA Superior Court announced closing of, I believe, 56 courtrooms, of which 24 of those are criminal courts. Also doing away with some of the juvenile programs. I don't know if it was also impacting the veterans program. What policy revisions would you be looking at in the DA's office to deal with a shortfall of 24 courtrooms? Would this affect charging decisions? And I wanted to get into charging decisions and overcharging, but I don't know if we have time to fit that in your long-minute response. And what policy revisions would you look to reduce the budget impact of the DA's office and the decisions that the DA's office made?
Well, our budget is $324 million. It's about $2 million more than it was last year. That's our proposed new budget. The court closures are going to mean that I don't believe that'll affect our caseload in as much as we're going to continue to file cases based on our standard, which is can you prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. What it'll mean, though, is that cases will take longer to get to trial. It may actually affect civil more than criminal. One of the ideas that I love is sending more cases to what's called teen court, which is run by a friend, Judge David Wesley, where rather than put some of these juvenile cases in juvenile court, some of the lower cases can go to teen court. Teen court is where a group of their peers determine whether they violated the law or not. And the peers determine the punishment, whether it be counseling, whether it be or community service. And so I like those ideas, and I think alternative sentencing courts are going to be the way we get through this period. And that'll be up to the DA to set the policy. I believe in those, and I think we ought to expand it. Sorry, it's hard to answer all of that.
It really is. I can tell you this morning I met with Local 575 and actually received their endorsement. And the Local 575 represents the court clerks and the paralegals in Los Angeles County. And they're most affected by the court closures. The court closures will, in fact, affect the criminal justice system. And I think my response to it is this, that having been a prosecutor for 26 years and always been in the courtroom, although I did manage 2 of the offices in the DA's office, I understand that you've got to move the product. And of the cases that we file, we've got to dispose of at least 90%, if not more, of those cases. And I propose that with AB 109, that gives us an opportunity to do more probationary sentences, more educational and rehabilitation programs. That way you free up the money in terms of incarceration. The largest percentage of the Superior Court's budget goes toward the transportation of inmates. Incarceration is incredibly costly. And so my proposal is do more rehabilitative programs for nonviolent offenders. And again, reforming the juvenile justice system. The fewer juveniles you have in the system, the less costly that system is.
What I would like to see is more diversion programs, which both of my opponents talked about. But I would like to see on the adult side.
I can flip the switch for them.
I guess we'll have to do it.
On the adult side, what I would like to see is a program similar to what Zev Yaroslavsky did with the 50 most vulnerable homeless people in society. I would like to see the courts get together and pick the 50 most recidivist individuals and have each of the judges take on 2 or 3 more people on their caseload and really focus resources on those individuals in an effort to get them out of the criminal justice system, out of the taxpayer's pocket, and really save the taxpayers money, but also protect us in terms of a public safety standpoint by making sure that these are rehabilitated people that won't be going back into the system. That's how I look at it.
Okay, LA?
Elder abuse is a growing problem in our society. What resources would you allocate to fighting and enforcing elder abuse cases?
My turn?
You determine. I don't.
Oh, Jackie.
Okay. All right. Al, I spoke on a radio station about this. Elder abuse is one of those things. Because we're baby boomers, there's going to be more and more elder abuse. I'm particularly concerned about financial elder abuse, where where people come into people's homes, they pretend they're contractors, or they befriend elderly people, and they get in and they get loans from them, they drain their bank accounts, they get the elderly people to sign things over. I'm actually riding around in my car with like 50 pamphlets that I'm passing out to everyone elderly in my family. That is a big, big problem. And what I want to see is, first of all, educating the elderly at senior centers, telling them what they shouldn't do, tell them not to answer the phone, and listen to anybody who says, wire me money, and don't tell anybody, because that's happening also. And I would like to encourage those of us who have elderly people in our lives to check on them. Spend time, watch what's going on, because you aren't there. Somebody comes in and takes advantage of them. Sometimes it's a family member. I also believe that we've made a lot of progress in asking for more time for people who abuse our elderly people, and I think that's the right way to go.
I would do a couple of things. First of all, I would increase a lot of the sentences for elder abuse. A lot of times elder abuse not only has to do with mortgage fraud, a lot of times elder abuse has to do with one's own family members who go in and sign their name to bank accounts and other types of things because they know their family members are at risk because they are elderly. And I think the penalties for those types of individuals ought to be increased. The other thing I would do is I would put more money into our elder abuse section and put more DAs and more investigators into our elder abuse section because I think it's a problem, it's an ongoing problem that we have, and we really, really, really do need to address that. I think that you have that money when you start being smart on crime. And my platform is smart justice, smart on crime. We've got to stop constantly using money to keep people in jail, and we need to focus in on violent offenders and people who do affect our elderly in the community.
From a financial elder abuse standpoint, I would use the resources in the office that probably won't cost us much more money to be proactive in the community, particularly with faith-based organizations and other people that work with the elderly to communicate with them and let them know what kind of predators are out there and how you can protect yourself. And everybody in the community should be doing this, being proactive and talking to people about these particular issues. With respect to physical abuse against elders, we have a great program within the DA's office that I had the pleasure of working for 5 years on working on not only elder abuse, but child abuse and domestic violence. So I know how to do it from a day-to-day standpoint, but we also need to have more training district attorney-wide across the office so that if it happens in any area of the county, in addition to our VIP units, that any district attorney can pick up that case and run with it.
I think between the three of you, you have more than 75 years of prosecution experience. And you have all been in the office long enough to see the chair change in that office. So my question is, regarding the present DA, what would you say is the single best accomplishment in the last 12 years? And what would you criticize as being the current DA's biggest mistake?
Bobby?
Without a doubt, his biggest accomplishment has been his policy with respect to 3 strikes. Without a doubt, the best policy that the current DA has instituted was a 3 strikes policy where we do not seek a 25-year-to-life sentence unless the new strike, the new felony, is a violent and a serious felony, unless the prosecutor handling the case decides that this person is a really bad person and makes an application to superior. That's more, without a doubt, the best policy, has saved taxpayers money and is the fair, ethical thing to do. If there is any criticism of the current administration, it would be some of the way that the union situation was handled and risk management and how that was handled and what that may have cost county taxpayers with respect to risk management in relationship to the union.
Well, I can list his accomplishments. Bobby's right, 3 strikes. I was with him when he proposed that, and I thought that was courageous when no one else agreed with him in terms of California district attorneys. And I think that has been important. His solving of cold cases like the Stephanie Lazarus case, putting resources in that so that no one escapes justice due to time. Certainly his creation of the Criminal Justice Institute, which trains law enforcement, and more than any other district attorney, he has promoted more women to higher management. I'm one of them, and I think that's really important, you know. And I also think that with regard to Bobby Grace, putting him, he's the first African American in major crimes in the district attorney's office. In terms of criticizing him, I am the chief deputy, and I work directly for him. And I have some differences which I share with him, but I think it's dysfunctional to share them out. But I have some ideas that I will build on.
I think that the three strikes policy is probably the best thing that Steve Cooley has ever done. I disagree with a lot of things. I disagree with his dismantling of the environmental crime section. I disagree with the spending of countless resources and money on these big cases when we've got community cases that are just as big and we don't have DAs. We don't have money helping those DAs. I've prosecuted a number of those cases, and I don't get what Bobby Grace gets in major crimes. I'm out here in your community, and I don't get that. What is the worst thing that he's done? What he's done, that lawsuit with our organization, the Association of Deputy DAs, him trying to stop collective bargaining within our office. I want to tell you folks, that's going to cost the county millions. When the county gets that bill from Jones Day, we're going to all see what happened. And I guarantee you, that money could have gone somewhere else, and it didn't go somewhere else. It's going to go to a private law firm defending what Steve Cooley has done, and I think that's deplorable. So those are the things that he's done that are good, and those are the things that he's done that are bad.
Wow. Thank you very much. Michelle?
Okay, I'll stand up. It seems that one of the most common crimes is identity theft, especially at the community level. And it's the highest rising statistically, maybe not the highest, but one of the highest. Should the DA's office set up a cyber or high-tech crime unit? Given that, and how can you help the victims of the theft of their identity or a violation of the victim's right to privacy, and under what statutes can you in the DA's office achieve results in this field?
Danette,
A lot of questions. Definitely. Well, they already have a high-tech unit now in the DA's office. The question becomes how much more money and resources do you want to put in it? Identity theft, I've prosecuted a number of those cases, and I can tell you it is a problem. But it takes a coordinated effort, because once you deal with the defendant in terms of that person taking someone else's identity, unfortunately the records aren't clear. And so that person, I'll tell you the biggest problem that comes up when someone is stopped by the police for something that they've done because someone has taken their identity. That person, it takes forever for that person's name to get cleared out of the system, and they keep coming back to court and coming back to court. I've handled a number of those things. So it's going to take a coordinated effort by not only the DA's office, law enforcement, credit card companies. All of us have to get together. And I think the way you do it is you kind of have a joint task force with all of us involved to see how we can better deal with that problem. It's an ongoing problem. As we get technically more sophisticated, the criminal gets technically more sophisticated. So it's incumbent upon us to put people who are to put people in our office, and we do have a number of DAs in our office who are so technically sophisticated, and that's one of the things that I would like to do, is to put them in that position, they want to be in that position, so that they can deal with it. But it's going to take a joint effort. It's a huge problem.
Jackie?
Rochelle, please go to my website. When I first announced I was running back in June 2011, I issued a press release, and this is an ongoing issue. I'm a prosecutor, so I have a healthy dose of paranoia. I consider myself very careful, and I've been the victim of identity theft 3 times now.
Wow.
And I am very worried about it, and here's what I'm pissed off about, Michelle. This is what I'm really angry about, and this is what I'd like to see changed. I knew where I used my ATM card. I called the bank, I told them, and they did nothing. All they said was, we will put that money back in your account. And a year later, Bank of America raised my fees for everybody. That is wrong. We have got to force the Bank of America and Wells Fargo and all those people to quit charging us fees for the thieves.
Right.
And start going after these people. This is ridiculous. And I am personally committed to making sure that everybody knows how to prosecute those cases, and law enforcement and banks do something.
Great. Right.
Rochelle, now you know that we do have a high-tech crime in the cyber unit. We've had one for quite some time, and we have been focused in on identity theft. What needs to happen, though, is exactly what Jackie's talking about. We need to have a coordinated effort with respect to both community response and working with the business community to make sure that what we do on the criminal side also goes over on the consumer protection side. So what I would do immediately is work with Kamala Harris, who I was happy to support for Attorney General, and we will work cooperatively with her in terms of making the banks do exactly what our Chief Deputy has talked about, which is to make sure that any fees that are improperly charged are taken back, and that we have an effective way of people to make sure that their Social Security information is taken care of, their driver's license taken care of, as Danette talked about, and just really make sure that people are protected overall, not only from the crime, but from the after effects of it.
Okay, thank you very much, the candidates. The panel section of the forum is completed, and I just want to commend you all for being so good as lawyers. You know, you do what people tell you to. Politicians, just career politicians, just go right on talking. That's Now it is time for the audience question and answers. So we have 20 minutes for questions from the audience. And members of the audience will also be limited to no more than 1 minute to answer their question. And responses from 20 seconds to the questions from the audience. And, I just want to mention, and then after that is concluded, though, each candidate will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. All right, so.
Welcome. My question to you is, it's great that Steve Cooley has pushed this 3 strikes policy to limit it only to violent felonies. As the district attorney for Los Angeles, would you be willing to meet with other district attorneys throughout the state of California to try to press that issue on with them as well?
I can answer that. I'm a member of California District Attorneys Association, and it's always interesting when you get together with district attorneys from other counties. They have sort of a skewed view. You know, when you have a county of just 10,000 people as opposed to 10.3 million people, you will see some strange things happen with regard to crime. Not only would I be willing to meet with them, I support the new 3-strike initiative, which would require all of them to do what we're doing in LA County, including re-sentence people who are in on petty crimes from 12 or 13 years ago, before the district attorney of LA County got in. Because there's a lot of people still doing time on those petty crimes. And what a great way to save money. Yeah. If we could get those people out and off of the state dole in terms of that money. And so I'm very supportive of going even a step further.
When the 3 strikes law was first enacted, I was part of about 500 lawyers throughout the state who put together a resolution to go up to the legislature and to have the state bar sponsor to make that 3rd felony a serious or violent felony. And we did it, and we tried to do it, and we couldn't get a legislator to hold it, and to take that bill forward. Many of them were too chicken to do it. And we have done that on and on and on for the last 10 years in the Conference of Delegates. So I would definitely support it. And one of the things that I would do is also revitalize our association with the California District Attorneys Association. Steve Cooley, in his tenure, has not allowed DAs to go forward and be part of that association actively like prior DAs have. I would definitely let DAs become more active in the California District Attorneys Association and thereby allowing them to talk with other DAs throughout the county. And there's no question about it that I would talk with other attorneys and the Attorney General, because you've got to have a relationship with both the Attorney General and other DAs, and I think I would, simply because I supported her, and I think, quite frankly, she would be open to a lot of my ideas of smart justice, which kind of are like her ideas in terms of smart justice. Thank you.
Absolutely everything that my colleagues have said is important, but more importantly, what we have to do is we have to engage the legal community to see if there are some due process equal protection issues with respect to having one policy in Los Angeles County and having another policy in Riverside County and having another policy in Ventura County. Even though it's up to the discretion of the DA over the overall law, I think that there's some real issues with respect to the DA instituting one policy in Los Angeles County and something else in San Francisco County. So that's another way that we can go about it, and I think with everybody all together, working from all different avenues, we can get the law changed to fit what is ethical and right.
Again, thank you very much, Bobby and Jackie and Danette, for coming out today. My question is in a sense out of the box. And I know as prosecutors you're so focused in terms of the law and protection and crime prevention and so on and so forth. With the economy becoming weaker and more severe and more cuts and more layoffs, we're obviously going to see crime increase in every community and every neighborhood. One of the aspects of Kamala Harris's administration that I really like, and I'm going to keep this very brief, is the fact that she's involved in prevention at the earliest level. Granted, we don't have money in terms of programs like this in terms of the budget, but you as prosecutors, how can you work outside the box in terms of your staff and going into neighborhoods and really starting to make an effect where that we'll start to see the effect down the line and a reduction in incarceration? Thank you.
That's a great question. I support the smart but tough on crime approach that Kamala talks about and ran on. What we can do from the district attorney's position, we can work with community groups and organizations. I'll give you a quick example. The Urban League and some other community groups are working cooperatively with all the schools that feed into Crenshaw High School. And they're concentrating resources with respect to businesses and mentoring and tutoring for children to get them back on track, those that are truant and who are not performing well. So these are at-risk children. We can work with those groups from the DA's office. If those kids are involved in criminal activity, we can get them involved in teen court and other juvenile diversion programs that can really help to not only reduce crime, but talk about the crime prevention at the earliest age that you're talking about and really save taxpayer money over the long run, because education really is the key for all of our children.
May I share some insight with you? You know, the economy actually has been bad for the last 10, 11 years.
Right.
And we expected crime to go up. I mean, that was really what we were expecting 10 years ago. And it hasn't. It's actually the lowest it's been in 60 years. And no one really knows why. No one really knows. People claim credit for it. No one really knows why. There are programs that are in existence that you don't know about the DA's office. Like I volunteer teach. I have for the last 5 years, 1 day a week. We're in 60 schools. The DA's office is in 60 schools, and I'm the highest ranking member who's a part of that team that goes in, spends 1 hour a week in an underserved neighborhood talking to kids about, you got options. You got options. There are places out there beyond your neighborhoods, and I think it's very important to do that. Truancy, Bobby mentioned the truancy program. There is a truancy program where we really strongly encourage parents, send your kids to school. That's how they stay out of trouble. And finally, teen court, which Bobby also mentioned. But there are many crime prevention programs. If you go to our website, you'll see them. And I believe in it, and I also look forward to working with whoever will listen, whatever it takes, to keep crime rates low. So thank you.
That's a great question, Sheila. In 2008, I chaired the first diversity summit in LA. Not one member of the upper management of the DA's office, not Steve Cooley himself, attended that diversity summit. We had about 700 participants. We had the mayor there. We had a number of the people from the city council. We had administrators from different school districts throughout the county. This is not something that I've decided, oh, let me take this up as a campaign idea so that I could get votes. I've been working and doing this for years. I have a mentee, and I was her mentor from high school. Guess what? Graduated from Hastings Law School, was the first person in her family to graduate from Hastings Law School, and now she's a lawyer. If every DA in our office took a mentee and advised that mentee based upon the State Bar's pipeline project, we would have more kids in school who stay in school, we'd have more professionals, we would just have a more educated society. And I have taken that responsibility on. When I was president of the county bar, one of the things that I did, I brought in young kids to talk to our 40-member board, to talk about educational programs and what they could do to help. So I believe that DAs should be focused in that area. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Question.
Hi. Thank you for your service, all of you. I've seen every single episode of Law and Order, so I'm very sympathetic. Sympathetic to whatever tools you need in order to get the guy who you all pretty much figure you need to get. Right now, we're having a lot of concern about privacy with regard to that. For instance, cell phone monitoring. That would be really easy. We see these, I have to say, corn-pwned, yokel law enforcement districts where they might be sitting around saying, oh yeah, let's see where so-and-so is tonight, and looking to see where their cell phone is. You know what I'm saying? What can you have in place to keep abuse down while still being able to get the information you need, say, for instance, via cell phone or internet observation?
Yes. Cell phones have been used to track people when you're talking about finding out whether someone was in an area where they could have committed a crime. I think as we're out here near LAX, I can think of there was a LAX police officer. They actually were able to solve that crime via the suspect's cell phone, and that was the guy who was decapitated by a guy who was driving his car. There are privacy concerns. I obviously would not want my cell phone looked at by anyone, and that's why I am one of the people in our office who's authorized to sign wiretaps, and wiretaps are these huge documents where police officers have to present probable cause. Why do you want to look at this person's cell phone? And there has to be evidence that this person is involved in a crime, and there are certain statutory protections of your privacy. And I think they work rather well. Not to say we don't make a mistake. We have accidentally tapped the LA Times, but yeah, there are safeguards in place. It's too complicated. It's a day-long seminar. Sorry.
Oh, sure. As Ms. Lacey says, there are protections across the board, both at a judicial level and within the district attorney's office for law enforcement making an application to look at. They can't just do it. They have to get permission either from a judge or come to our office and get an application for a wiretap. But more importantly, it's also a federal crime. So if it comes up and somebody tried to use that as information with respect to a criminal case, and it came out to the light of day, then those people would be subject to federal penalties that could get them significant time on the federal side. So I think it's a major issue that all of us are going to be watching to make sure that we're both doing things the right way, that we're going after the bad people, but making sure that we do it in a fair and ethical manner.
I won't repeat the safeguards because there are a lot in place, but I want to tell you that cell phones and cameras are critical to criminal investigations. And I was actually having a discussion with the Undersheriff, Paul Tanaka, about this in Gardena last week. You know, a crime is committed and there are no witnesses. You get that film on top of the bank building. You see the suspect. There was a case that was definitely prosecuted in that South Bay area with respect to that kind of a crime that occurred. There were no witnesses. I personally prosecuted a case last year. It took me 3 times to try the case. It was a witness killing case. In that case, the way we tracked the defendant was his cell phone. We tracked him. He was like within a minute of where that robbery and murder occurred. And he lied about it when the police talked to him about it. And that was great critical evidence because here we had his cell phone records. Here we had him on tape at the McDonald's. So we definitely knew he was the person who committed the crime. So I think there are so many safeguards in place that help us. But at the same time, I want to stress, it is so important for law enforcement to have cameras and cell phones.
Why did it take you 3 times to try the case? Because of that?
Well, no, not because of that. Because the jury, the first 2 times, one of the things that we did was we turned the co-defendant, his girlfriend, and I put her on the stand for the first 2 trials. And it became a trial within a trial because she just lied and lied and lied. 3rd time, I didn't use her. I got smart. Okay? You learn from your previous mistakes. And I used that cell phone tracking evidence more aggressively. And as a result of that, he was convicted. It was a terrible, terrible crime.
Oh yeah, let's see, Mark.
All 3 of you are here because you're Democrats.
Right.
This is a political race, not just a race about who's the most qualified. Unfortunately, we also have to judge who can win. So I'd like you to talk for a moment about how you can win, how you can beat Carmen Trutanich, because he's the elephant in the room. He's got Jerry Brown's endorsement for some reason. And a lot of other endorsements that I don't quite understand. Can you talk to that?
That's a great question. That's a great question, Mark.
That is a great question. And I was hoping that you guys would get Ted Lieu when he stood up here before you.
Oh, they
have an
did.
explanation as
No,
to
we
why
did.
they
We
did
did.
supporting Carmen Trutanich. But I'll tell you how I believe I can win. First of all, if Carmen Trutanich is one of the last 2 standing and I'm with him, he can't attack me. And he can't attack me on any of Steve Cooley's policies. I have the Democratic Party behind me. I have the National Women's Political Caucus behind me. I have 10 major Democratic clubs behind me. I have my community behind me. And I have the Association of Deputy District Attorneys behind me. And so when Carmen Trutanich and I get into a debate, he'll have Jerry Brown and he'll have Ted Lieu, but when your peers say, I want you, and when some locals say, I want you, and when the party says, we think she's the best, I've got a lot standing there. Remember, in November, it'll be a 2-person race, and I'll be there with Carmen Trutanich, and the Democrats are going to come out in November. Trust me, they want to put President Obama back in.
Yeah.
I saw it. And they will be behind me.
How to beat Carmen Trutanich. Well, Carmen Trutanich is beating himself. I can name 6 things that he has done already that indicate he has poor character. He made a pledge he wasn't going to run for another higher office. He broke that pledge. He misused Sheriff Baca by breaking a law in a commercial. He paid for YouTube hits. He went down in flames trying to use a false ballot type. And recently, we're discovering he made up that whole story about being in a shootout in a park. I mean, really, what else? I don't care if you have Jerry Brown and every big-name Democrat. What you need, and what I believe I bring, is you need more than the title of Democrat. I am a Democrat. I've been a Democrat all of my life. But you need experience, you need a knowledge of our vast criminal justice system, and you need answers. And you need the ability to raise support. And I have done that. I'm number 2. I am chasing right behind. and I will beat him.
I think that your question makes some assumptions that Californians have rejected time after time after time. You can't buy elections in California. We've seen that before. More importantly, this is going to be a race that really is going to come down to who can get their supporters to go to the polls on June the 5th when there's nothing really on the ballot that's going to be driving them there. So just because you can write a big check is not going to save you this time. It's going to be your ability to connect with people. It's going to be your ability to connect with people in real time using new media and social media. And that's really going to be the real keys to getting, being in the 1 or 2 spot with respect to June 5th. And I think that's going to be the way, the winning way for our campaign.
Robert, what are the runoff rules on June 5?
We have to have over 50% to avoid a runoff.
Otherwise, top two.
The top two.
Regardless of party, right?
Regardless of party. Well, it's not partisan.
It doesn't matter.
It's open primary.
Pat?
Yes, good afternoon. Each one, well, this one. What distinguishes you from the other candidates in the race?
Bobby?
Sure. I'm the only candidate who has been in the hardcore gang division, our family violence division, and now in our major crimes division. So I have the broadest experience prosecuting different types of violent crimes that have been plaguing Los Angeles County. Over 70 homicide cases that I've tried as a DA. But parallel to that, I'm the only candidate that was actually on and with the union, supported starting the collective bargaining unit, and really stood up for the proposition that the deputy district attorneys could have their own collective bargaining unit and look out for each other. I fought for that. That's what distinguishes me from everybody else.
What distinguishes me from my wonderful colleagues is that we've all been extraordinary litigators. We've all kicked butt in a courtroom, some maybe more than others. But for the last 10 years, I have stood as a leader. I have supervised central operations, which contain 200 people. I have supervised the elite units that Bobby talked about. I now am the #2 person in the office, and I supervise 2,100 people, 1,000 lawyers. And while in this club, you know this is true, there are members who can lead it. And not everybody who's a member of this club can lead it. And that takes an extraordinary skill. I have a demonstrated skill of leading prosecutors. And I am very proud to present that to the public and ask for your endorsement. And that is really what distinguishes me, a litigator as well as a leader.
What distinguishes me is a litigator, yes. I've served in 2 special units, crimes against peace officers, as well as the career criminal unit. I have tried gang cases. Last year I tried a Mexican mafia case that was rejected by the hardcore gang division. I've tried domestic violence cases. The first death penalty case here on the west side, People versus Ricky Madison, that was a domestic violence murder. So I've done all of that, but I'm the only one who's been elected to actually lead an organization. And I was elected the first female African-American president to lead the largest local voluntary bar association in the nation, the LA County Bar Association. That distinguishes me. And that gives me a broad base of appeal for both civil and criminal. And although Bobby may be a member of the Association of Deputy District Attorneys, they endorsed me. And that distinguishes me as well. My peers have endorsed my candidacy. The party has endorsed my candidacy. 15 major Democratic clubs have endorsed my candidacy. And of course, I believe that I can work toe-to-toe with the Attorney General because I supported Kamala Harris. And I think that when you support someone, they're more likely than not to help you with your agenda. And I think that that distinguishes me. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your time.
find is very interesting. My question is, in terms of when you have big potential cases like Trayvon Martin, because I believe legality is global, that what happens in Florida will eventually affect what happens in California, and more specifically Los Angeles. What would you do to ensure that police understand when someone is arrested? Because a lot of cases that I've read throughout the years, the question is, well, there's a black and gray in the personal decision of each police person as to whether or not this person should have been arrested. And of course, there have been, the case has yet to be started, but some people are saying that because the policeman was not arrested at the scene of the crime, then that could potentially change the entire case. But here's my question. If this case were being tried in Los Angeles, what would you have done different? And do you think that the case is being handled properly? Just your opinion.
Well, first of all, Trayvon Martin, the suspect is not police, it's a neighborhood watch.
Oh yes, I understand that, but a large deal was made.
Are we in the question or the answer? You gotta put police there. She started to answer, but then she started talking, and she politely stopped.
Responding to her question, so I can be more specific. I know that it's not the
Question, how do you handle a case like Trayvon?
Well, you know, we have had cases that are similar to Trayvon Martin come up. I can remember the Inglewood case, certainly the Rodney King case, and others. I think that what you have to have is a district attorney who has strength of character and belief, who is not afraid of opposing police, especially when they're wrong. I do think you have to wait for the evidence, and that's the hardest thing, because in our news cycles where everybody has a cell phone and everybody is a self-appointed reporter, it is hard to wait and see. But I do think that we'll have to see what happens. It's in the early stages, and it appears that the case was properly filed, but we sort of have to wait and see on that. But I agree, it brings up the issue, it opens up old wounds, and as a district attorney, you have to be willing to prosecute anybody. No one is above the law.
I think it takes training, and the DA has to be in the forefront of that training and not in bed with law enforcement. That's quite frankly what has to happen. What I would have done differently is, as the DA of that county, and what I would do as the DA of LA County, when a case like that comes up and you have an inkling that law enforcement is going to make the decision not to present it, you pick up the phone and you call them and you say, bring the police reports over here so a trained eye can look at it, and also you come over here so I can tell you why it is we should be filing that case or why we shouldn't be filing that case. And I think the special prosecutor was absolutely correct in terms of filing the Trayvon Martin case.
Really what we're talking about here is law enforcement being trained, but also being willing to do investigative work. That's really the whole key with the Trayvon Martin case. And we really have to worry about, all of us in the criminal justice system, we don't only have to worry about actually doing justice, we have to worry about the perception of justice. So the individuals, citizens of Sanford, Florida, what they deserve to have, what they needed to have was a thorough investigation of the case, and then have a decision made by an independent prosecutorial agency decide whether it should be filed and whether it would not be filed. And I know that Trayvon's parents, all they wanted was that the system to work properly, and they were willing to live with whatever decision will be made. But you will always have a DA in me that will make sure that the investigation is done properly.
Thank you. We have gone over our time for questions. What we have remaining is 2 minutes for each candidate for closing comments. And we do also have the West LA Democratic Club is going to have an endorsement vote at the end of the meeting. Okay, just the West LA Democratic Club. So do stay for that, in that club. So why don't we start with Bobby, closing statement.
Again, thank you so much to the Westchester Democrats and the West LA Democrats for allowing us to speak to you today. When you think about the Democratic candidate that you're going to pick, because this is a nonpartisan race, but all of us are Democrats. So when you think about the Democratic candidate that you're going to pick for district attorney, you want to think about the candidate who is going to stand up for you as citizens, who's going to make sure that the criminal justice system is fair and efficient, who is going to follow a course of progressive democratic ideals, which include being smart but tough on crime. In me, you get a prosecutor that's been there for 23 years, who spent 7 years in the hardcore gang division, spent over 40 cases of gang murder cases, so I know how to prosecute violent crime. In me, you get a candidate who's been in a domestic violence unit, who has prosecuted elder abuse crimes, who's prosecuted domestic violence crimes, and has stood up for children in fighting against child abuse. In me, you get a candidate who knows how to try big cases, who knows how to handle cases that have a lot of spotlight on it. But in me, you get a candidate who is focused firmly on making sure that realignment works, that taxpayers get the benefit of AB 109, that you save money, but also that the public is going to be protected every step of the way as we take this journey toward a smarter but tougher California approach to criminal justice. So when you go to pick a candidate, pick the candidate who is your neighbor, lives in Ladera Heights, knows your issues, but also is the most well-rounded and the most experienced in every type of crime that plagues you as citizens of LA County. Thank you.
What did I miss?
I want to thank you. Sometimes we go into hostile territory, and we have to prove who's the more democratic person, you know what I mean? And it has been ugly because we haven't had a chance to discuss the issues. But this group has been the most issue-focused, and I appreciate that as a candidate, because the last thing I want to do is tear people down. I think that's so unhelpful. We have too much of that in politics. I am the best candidate because I have the ability to beat Carmen Trutanish. I have the most experience. I didn't mention my endorsements, and my campaign manager is going crazy over in the corner, so I should mention those to you. I'm endorsed by Congressman Howard Byrne. I also am endorsed by the National Women's Political Action Committee, former Assemblywoman Gwen Moore, former State Senator Martha Escudia. What I call real women are behind me and helping me in this campaign. Much has been made about the union issue that our office faced, and it was a very painful time. But Bobby is correct, because I was the person who volunteered to be on the management team in negotiation, and he has been the real person who has been there helping to organize. But somehow the union has gotten interested in revenge, and they have chosen to get their revenge, and they didn't do Bobby justice in my opinion. But that's another story. I present to you a person who has an extraordinary amount of experience, judgment, and temperament. I grew up in the Crenshaw district. I went to Dorsey High School. I married my high school sweetheart. I raised my 2 children and my nephew, whom my sister was unable to raise because she was addicted to drugs. I have life experience that helped me judge in a fair and impartial manner. And I am the right kind of person to lead our justice system through the biggest sea change that we'll ever experience since the enactment of the 3 strikes and the death penalty. Send me. I'm the one.
I think this is such a historic year for the DA's office because you have so many qualified Democrats running, and I think that each of the candidates here before me clearly are just so qualified, and it's unfortunate that one of us will have to take on Mr. Trutanich. And I'm hoping that, quite frankly, one of us gets 50 or more percent. Why should you vote for me? Why am I a demonstrated leader, and why can I be Carmen Trutanich? Take a look at the people who have backed me. And when your own peers back you, as I said, it really says something. I can stand up and have stood up when injustice has occurred. When Prop 8 came down, not one of the people running for DA took a stance, except me. Go Google my name. As president of the county bar, I talked about the injustice of Prop 8. Nobody stood up because it was unpopular. One of the things that my colleagues know about me is that I will stand up for unpopular things if they are right and just. And that's exactly what I did. I too have had management experience. Unfortunately, I did not support Mr. Cooley. I supported someone who I thought was a better and would make a better DA. That was Mr. Garcetti. I supervised 2 offices under Mr. Garcetti. But what normally happens in our office is if you pick the wrong person and that person doesn't win, guess what happens? You're out. But it didn't stop me because I went ahead and continued to prosecute difficult cases throughout the county. I'm the only candidate that can say I prosecuted cases to the south of Compton, to the north of Van Nuys, east in Pomona, and west out to the airport. I know all the communities. And so, ladies and gentlemen, when I'm standing up with Carmen Trutanich and I'm saying, where have you been for the last 20 years? Because I can tell you where I've been for the last 20 years. He doesn't have an answer for that. He has nothing he can challenge me on in this office. And I think I can beat him. I know I can beat him with your help. Let me have your endorsement. Let me have your vote, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank all of our great candidates. I'm sure they're going to do quite well in the election coming up. I want to thank our panelists for their excellent questions. And I want to thank our audience as well for your questions. And so we do have the endorsement vote by the West LA Democratic Club. So they will be doing that.
And thank you to Robert for being our moderator.